All right.
Right,
Welcome to the Domestic
man.
Draft Podcast. We're back after a week off, and I don't know how much I've talked about it on the show, but I just had a little one. So,
Yeah.
yeah, congrats to me. But that's why we were off last week, and so it's good to be back. Dan, why don't you kick us off with what you're drinking? I'm excited to talk some Bears today. The draft's over finally. After all this buildup, we get to talk about it. But why don't you kick it off with what you're drinking?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and just say, congratulations again, and
Thanks.
glad to hear everyone's doing well, and the house is full, and you guys are having your hands full as well. It's
Yeah.
exciting times. I'm happy for you guys.
Yeah.
But the beer. Let's get into the beer. Let's get into the important stuff. Enough of the family talk. The beer I have is a brewery called Figueroa Mountain Brewing Company. It's about like a 3-hour drive north of LA. So this isn't quite a San Diego brewery. It's a little bit north. And this brewery was founded in 2010 by a father-son duo. So I know we usually hear like two friends or roommates kind of deal, business partners. But this one's a little more family-based with a father and son, Jim and Jamie, excuse me, Dighton Horfer. They opened this place up in 2010, and they had a passion for craft beer, but also like the scenery in the region. And they really wanted to pay homage to the Santa Ynez Valley, where they're kind of from and where they had a house. And they have these beautiful, and I'll show the people on YouTube, but beautiful can work, beautiful artistry on their cans that reflect kind of the scenic background in which they grew up. So they got a couple tap rooms throughout the area up near LA as well. The beer I am drinking from them is called the Hoppy Poppy. And it's actually like this time of the year right now. If you drive around California, you just see like, bursts of orange right off the expressway. If you're driving, and it's like poppy fields are just blooming everywhere. So that's, paying homage to that scenery as well. But this is really good. It's got a 3.7 on Untapped. It's got floral, citrus, hop flavors, aromatics as well. It's just really easy drinking. 6.5% as well, and it didn't have any of that real skunky flavor to it. It's kind of a nice little session, sit down and enjoy it. IPA, and just seems like overall quality stuff. Nothing flashy, right? You go to their website; it's very family oriented. Their cans are very clean. Nothing too flashy, just good beer, good product, and they like what they're doing. So it kind of shows in their product. What about you, man? What are you drinking?
Nice. I feel like I have a pretty similar style brewery and beer. So I'm drinking New Belgium Brewing. It's one that you can find most anywhere. They're based out of Fort Collins, Colorado. The beer I have is called Voodoo Ranger Tropic Force. It's part of the Voodoo Ranger IPA series. It's a tropical IPA. It's 9.5%, 3.76 on Untapped, but it's got this nice punch of pineapple and mango. You really get like this, good flavor from that. It's not just all hops. So I really like it. I'm a big fan. But if you don't know too much about New Belgium, you might know the logo, the bike. But it was founded back in 1991. A young couple, Kim Jordan and Jeff Lebesque, went on a bike trip through Belgium in 1988, inspired them to bring back the centuries-old Belgian beer to good old Fort Collins, Colorado. They began by installing some brewing equipment in the basement of their Fort Collins home, and the rest is history. New Belgium's most famous for its flagship beer, Fat Tire Ale. It was actually
Mm-hmm.
one of its first two test brews sold at the Colorado Brewers Festival in June of 91. The other brew was Abbey. It's a Belgian style double, won a gold medal at the Great American Beer Festival in October 93. So, right out of the gate, they were brewing some pretty good beers out of their basement. But they, won that gold medal. It actually wasn't in a Belgian category at the time. Great American Beer Festival didn't have any Belgian categories because Belgian beers were pretty rare back in the early 90s. They didn't even have their own category yet. So they were really kind of doing something that hadn't been done. They brought that beer back from Belgium. And so over the past 3 decades, New Belgium's expanded. They have, Asheville, North Carolina in 2016, Denver, Colorado in 2018, and in 2021 acquired Bell's Brewery out in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is another fantastic brewery.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you might know the logo. It's the bike. It's pays homage to their bike trip that started it all. But also at each of their employees' 1-year anniversary, they give them this New Belgium brand cruiser bike. So I thought that was pretty cool. They started doing that back in the late 90s, and then it's another cool thing about this brewery is, they've been around for a long time. Back in 2012, now they're totally employee owned. They have an employee stock ownership program. So entirely employee owned. You don't see that on a lot of breweries. I think that's pretty cool too. So New Belgium Brewing, fantastic Tropic Force IPA.
Yeah.
Now, Dan, let's get into the good stuff. Let's get into the Bears draft. We've been talking Caleb Williams for who knows how long, right?
Yep.
The last year, I feel like finally they did it. They confirmed, that he was going to be the pick. How are you feeling about having Caleb Williams on the team? We know his number. He's number 18.
Yep. I mean, I feel great about it. It's kind of, the days after, just like kept refreshing social media, reading the articles about him, kind of going back to his high school days, but just really excited. Like, also like kind of, we don't know what we don't know because we've never had like a quarterback prospect like this on our team as well.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a lot of new, and I've kind of seen some of the things that are coming out as well. And, the Bears are hiring a lot of people to build kind of this brand up and to take care and make sure Caleb Williams is taken care of. I mean, they hired like a new director of communications or whatever that came from Kansas City. So he's familiar with like the superstar quarterback and how that should be handled and how they're dealt with on the day to day. And I think, behind closed doors, those are probably some requests from Caleb Williams in his camp. Like, if you're going to draft us, you're going to say yes to our asks of resources that we're going to want to put in place. And the Bears are doing it. So it's uncharted territory as a Bears fan to kind of see all of the resources being built in and around the quarterback. And it's exciting, man. Just seeing some of the podcasts and interviews he's on too. His general, like, confidence and comfortability with like his own skin and who he is. And, he doesn't care about the nonsense that's being said about him with some of the things like, crying to his mom, fingernails paint. Like, he does not care. It does not affect him. And I just can't wait, I was like, when's OTAs? When can we see some sort of highlights with Caleb Williams wearing Bears logos and put it on my feed? I need it immediately. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah. That's my number one thing with him, just watching him in interviews and seeing him at the draft and everything like that, the combine, all that stuff. Like, he's just so comfortable in front of a camera, in the spotlight. Like, Chicago always has been that, right? You're always going to have that spotlight on you. Fans want you to win. They want you to win now, and I think he's going to embrace that and be the first guy in maybe forever that Chicago's had, a big personality at the quarterback position. I don't think we've had that ever. And so I think that's really cool to have somebody that's really like a true spoken leader. Will be interesting to hear what he has to say after a loss, that kind of thing. I think, I'm excited for that for sure. And it's interesting that his role model is Aaron Rodgers. I'm hoping that we see a little bit of that in his play for sure. And he can finally get us back on top of Green Bay. It's been a long time. So I'm pumped for him.
Yeah.
And expectations are through the roof, but I don't think he cares. Yeah. I think he's excited for it. It's awesome.
It's like franchise altering too. I mean, things are changing. They're hiring people and creating positions that like did not exist. And you wonder like if they would have existed if they did not fall into this number one pick, if they kind of would have just kept doing the same old.
Yeah, I don't think they would have. I don't think they would have hired all these people if Justin Fields was still around. And it was also interesting. He's the number one selling jersey, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Everybody's on board right away. So it's awesome. So, we get Caleb Williams. We're pumped about that. We got Odunze at number 9. Did you think that was going to happen? What were you think? Did you watch the draft first of all, Dan? Did you?
Yep. Me and my buddy out here, Alex, we've done the last 2 years where we kind of switch off watching it at our places. Actually, it's been his place both times. I had to cancel this year on our place. But we watched it. And I think as soon as Atlanta drafted the quarterback, I'm blanking on his name right now.
Michael Penix. Yeah.
Michael Penix. I was like, holy shit, Rome Odunze might fall to the Bears. Like, this might happen. And it did. And so I love watching it. Love watching the picks go off, and that anticipation, having 2 top 10 picks was insane. I think we all knew Caleb was going number 1, but like just seeing it play out, having all of the quarterbacks go, a lot of offensive players go, but having Rome Odunze there at 9, I don't think it could have worked out any better for the Bears. That was a lot of like mock draft dreams of what could potentially happen, best case scenario. And it did, and it came to fruition. Personally, I like it, right? I'm for it, but also, I can be a little critical on this one. I think it is the good pick. You want to surround Caleb Williams with as much talent as possible. Obviously, DJ Moore trading out for Keenan Allen was doing that. I've just, in my core and my philosophy is, receivers. Usually you could find them in most rounds. They're very easily, a lot of the top receivers are sometimes hidden gems. And it just ends up working out that way. I don't know why it does, but in the NFL, I think a little more recently has only been skewing that to where first round receivers are producing. So I hope that's the case. But we could have had the number one defensive player picked if we really wanted to, which we could have had the number one offensive player in Caleb, backed it up with the number one defensive player, maybe got a defensive lineman. But I mean, that's if I want to be skeptical on it. I'm not. I like the pick.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people saying that Odunze could be the number one wide receiver in this draft. So it's possible that you got the number one wide receiver and the number one quarterback in the draft. Those are two premium positions. If they're saying Odunze would have gone in the top 10 in any other draft as well, he's just that good. Like, I think you got to get somebody like that, somebody young, right? DJ Moore is going to be around for a little while. Keenan Allen, who knows how much longer you're going to get out of him. That guy's hurt every year. He'll probably miss a couple of games next year. Hopefully you got him for the year after as well. And then who knows after that. So it's good to have a really young guy, somebody that Caleb can grow with and, hopefully have a, little training camp buddy that he could throw balls to on the side. I think it's cool. I'm excited for Odunze for sure. The only other thing, like, I don't know that I would have went defense. We did need defense. Yeah. I was looking at Fashanu. That was another guy that Caleb was saying that he would have liked to, because I think they were high school teammates.
Yep.
That would have been cool. But I think I'd rather have the big weapon wide receiver.
I mean, it's the fun pick, of course, right? Like everyone wants the stud receiver. You could have gone offensive tackle as well. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to fault him, right? It's hard to fault him. I'm sure they had plans for maybe an offensive tackle if Rome Odunze wasn't there, and they were going to go ahead and get that guy. But with Rome Odunze still being there, and just the flight to Detroit, they're on the same flight. They're on social media, like tweeting at each other, joking together. And like, could you imagine if, they fly to Detroit together and then they leave Detroit together because they're both drafted by the Bears? Could you imagine that happening? And it did. And like all the content, man, I was all for it. Like them, shaking up after the draft, going into each other's like post interviews and like kind of just like cheering each other on. Like, I mean, Bears won the offseason. It's without even playing a game. I think they went and played catch yesterday and posted some photos like post workout. So they draft the receiver, the quarterback, right? And then they come back in the third round and they draft that offensive tackle, Kiran. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name.
Amegadjie.
Amegadjie, yeah. They draft him out of Yale. Here his skill set is like something that you can't coach. His physical attributes are something that you can't coach. The things I'm hearing is that he's pretty raw. But like I just said, right, like his physical attributes and abilities are things that are above coaching. So I think they took him with confidence that, all right, this guy, maybe we can get Braxton for another year or two, or maybe they just believe in him and they're just adding depth to the offensive line. But definitely kind of a project pick, but a physical specimen. So I don't hate the pick at all.
Yeah, I like that. You can never have too much offensive line. It seems like the Bears have really brought in a couple guys for the offensive line in the offseason and then drafting here too. Like if you see a lineman that you like, especially a tackle, you got to grab him. Too. And so, local kid. He's from Hinsdale. But yeah, it says he's got rare blend of athletic traits, eye-popping length. Might be a mistake to bet against the high number of boxes that he checks. Hand usage is a work in progress. But we'll see. I think they're good at coaching up tackles. I think I'm excited for his development. He's got room to grow, right?
Yeah.
They're not expecting him to jump in here and take a starting spot. So I think that's pretty cool.
And I think, and Parkins from 670 Score, Danny Parkins was saying the other day, he's like, this is your opportunity, Matt Eberflus and your staff, to like finally take somebody and coach them up above their potential. You hear those stories of these players and they get with a coach and they just produce their all-time numbers. Like, this is your time with this roster, not only the rookies, but also some of the second year players like a Jervon Dexter, right? You're a
Hmm.
defensive coach. Let's see you coach some of these players up to where they're actually reaching their potential. And we're not just reading about, oh, well, he's got the measurements and he's got the ability and the testing numbers. Let's actually see it. Let's see it happen.
Yeah. And this guy's a perfect example of that. So I'm excited to see what he develops into. At the very least, a good swing tackle that you can throw in there, if
Yeah,
somebody gets hurt.
and I agree with your point too. Just add depth. Offensive
Yeah.
line, that's a position in the offensive line. You just as many cuts as you possibly can at that position. Just keep
Yeah.
swinging.
All right. So you come back in round 4, and a little bit of a surprise in round 4, Tory Taylor, punter out of Iowa. Some people have been
Crikey,
I feel like
crikey.
this is a little bit of some people like Mel Kiper loves this pick. There's other people giving it, the worst grade of any pick that the Bears made in the draft. They only had 5 picks in this draft, right? In this whole draft, and using one of them, especially an earlier pick in the 4th round on a punter.
Yeah.
I think it's risky, but this guy was far and away the best one in the class. And I don't know that I wouldn't say the Bears had a huge need at punter, but when you can get somebody as good as this guy seems to be, I think you got to grab him. What do you think about that pick?
I don't love it, especially, that was our last pick. We traded back in for the 5th pick. So like that as your last pick of just like, it's a ballsy pick, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Poles is just like showing the league, like, yeah, we're pretty good. We're going to go ahead and draft a punter with our 4th round pick. Yeah, I mean, people that do love him point out like what he can be as a weapon and how he can, pinpoint teams in the 10-yard line. He's really good at like coffin corner punts and placing the ball and getting it out of bounds and having the spin come back. I just have a hard time using that pick on a special teams player. I really do. I would have liked another maybe swing at a defensive lineman. We came back into the draft. We'll talk about him in a second for that defensive lineman in the 5th round, but I would have liked another one. I really would have. I think a lot of the punters that are really excelling in the league take a little bit to mature and kind of figure out the NFL game comparative to the college. I mean, this guy's coming from Australia. Iowa's obviously their best weapon because they had no offense. So he was helping them win games because he was pinning the opposition so deep, giving the offensive break. I mean, if that translates to the Bears in his rookie year, he's, coffin cornering people and putting teams on the 5-yard line and, making life easy on the Bears defense. It's a huge pick, but he needs to be the Bears punter for at least 5 years straight for him
Mm-hmm.
to, earn that value of a 4th round pick on a punter. You really
Yeah,
does.
100%. He's got to be around for a while. And like you said, guy out of Australia, he's big personality. People were comparing him to Pat McAfee. But he's also a highly decorated All-American punter, FBS record holder in punt yards. For whatever you want to say about that, if that just says a lot about how bad Iowa was or how good he is. But the FBS record holder in punt yards, planted nearly half of his 162 punts inside the 20-yard line from 2021 to 2022. So that's pretty good too. I mean, if he's somebody that can consistently put the ball inside the 20, you're going to need that. I don't know. I'm excited for it. It is a ballsy pick. It's a very ballsy pick. And it's also a pick that kind of tells everyone else around you, and especially everybody in your division, like, we're ready to go.
Right.
If you're
That's what
grabbing a
it
punter,
is.
you're grabbing a punter or a kicker or something like that, you're telling everybody, like, we're good. We're going to
Yeah.
grab the best guy at this position, the special teams position, and we're ready to go. We'll see you this, in September. So
Poles submitted that pick with a cigar about to get lit. He was like, all right, let's finish this thing. Draft the
yeah.
punter. Let's do
But
it.
did you potentially get the best player at 3 positions, quarterback, wide receiver, and now punter? I don't know. Something to
Yeah.
be said about that.
Yeah. Bears fans will talk themselves into it. I'll talk myself into it. But I think from an outsider looking in, you see the Bears picking a punter in the 4th round. You're like, what the hell? What the hell are they doing? Right? Like, they think their
Yeah.
team's that good. And I think, a position like a D line or maybe even another offensive lineman would have been a smarter pick.
Yeah.
But that being said, right, they trade back in. So they
Mhm.
trade a 4th rounder next year. to come back into the draft in the 5th round with the 144th pick, and they pick Austin Booker. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, he's an edge player. I think they needed to grab somebody like you said, and maybe he was somebody that was on that back end of their board that obviously was falling, and they wanted to spend a pick to get back in. I'm glad that they got back in. Now, if you look up Austin Booker's draft and his combine profile, I like to look up NFL.com's just comparisons on this. NFL comp, Max Crosby.
Yeah.
Draft projection, round 3. Are you serious? And they got this guy in the 5th round. Why was he falling, right? They're saying he's got basketball player like wingspan, frame to add more mass, which is what you want out of an edge player. You want somebody that's got a little bit of room, So I think it's a project. It's 100% a project, right? But and that comp is ridiculous for a project. But I don't know. I think it's obviously a good pick. Somebody that was projected to go higher, fell a little bit. Bears saw the value and jumped back in. What do you think?
Yeah, we'll see. I think this is what we were talking about earlier, what I brought up. This is the opportunity for the coaches to really prove themselves. Because everything I've heard about this guy is that he's small, he's athletic. It reminds me of like Leonard Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he didn't pan out for the Bears, but he had a good NFL career once he got little bit later in his career and had
was coached up.
He had Aaron Donald opposite, which was freeing up a lot of space for him. And also coached up. So what I heard about this guy, Austin Booker, is that, a lot of people thought he was going to go back to school and that he should have, and he would have been maybe like a 2nd round pick next year and made a lot more money. But he thought he was ready to come out. I see the Max Crosby comps. I also see that the Bears have, I think, one of the D-line coaches that did work with Max Crosby early in his career on the roster as well. So everybody's kind of lighting up at that comp and that situation. I mean, a 5th end defensive lineman, I know Eberflus likes to do platoons and kind of throw defensive linemen out there in rotations and, every other play kind of just keeping fresh bodies out there. So I like it with that regard. I don't know. I want a little more nasty, maybe somebody with a higher pick, something that can come in day one and be a contributor instead of someone who's going to work their way up. And, when the opportunity comes, maybe he produces, but he's definitely, somebody down the depth chart that's got to earn his way up. So I'm not too pumped on him, but maybe we'll coach him up and his, skill set will show. But I've been hurt before with, it was Leonard Floyd. Before that, it was Shea McClellan. When we draft these defensive end projects where they're just athletic, but they're not strong. And
Floyd was a 1st round pick though. I think he was top 10 even, wasn't he? I mean, he was pretty high. McClellan too, I think was maybe a late 1st rounder, something like that. Both of them very high. This is a 5th round pick. If this doesn't work out, who cares?
For sure.
I mean, this type of pick happens all the time. 5th round pick, they don't work, they don't pan out. And really, this guy, 2021 redshirted Minnesota, 2022 played in 6 games as a reserve, 2023 first team All Big 12 conference, Big 12 conference defensive newcomer of the year. Like, he just kind of exploded last year when he got some playing time. So it makes sense that you're here, that you were hearing that, you should go back and play a little more and kind of prove that last year wasn't a fluke.
Right.
So, he led their team, 12 tackles for loss, 8 sacks. Like he's got something there. I think there's some juice there. He needs some coaching for sure. Needs to put on some weight. You're probably not going to see him a ton. His name called a ton this year. Definitely not. I would expect though by next year he's rotating in, and you're starting to hear his name a little bit more if he's worth it. But I'm not expecting much out of him this year. So, I mean, overall, what are you giving polls on this this draft class?
I mean, I think you just give him an A regardless of the trade from last year. I mean, you look at the trade with Carolina and what it's produced. It's one of the all-time steals, I think. One of the all-time swindles of a trade. I mean, good God. We got, Darnell Wright, DJ Moore, Stevenson, Caleb Williams. Like it's unbelievable what that trade has produced and the turnover the roster has produced. I think you got to give him an A. I mean, especially with the top 2 picks in the top 10, Odunze and Caleb Williams, when a team and a franchise that's never had an offensive player It was funny listening to, again, Parkins and Spiegel had Odunze on, and they brought up like I don't know the number, but they brought up the best season of a Bears wide receiver for yardage. And like Odunze was like, that's in a year. He's like, oh, I'll get that in like 6 weeks, kind of thing. Like the offense has been so bad forever. It's just, I think it's an A. I think we're going to.
And we've never had a 4,000 yard passer, right?
It's crazy.
I will bet my life savings right now that Caleb Williams gets 4,000 yards at some point in his career, whether, if not in the first like 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Within the first 2-3 years.
I mean, he has to.
And this first year, I think the over under was like 3,400 yards on DraftKings or something like that. Like he's going to hit the over on that. He stays healthy. He's going to hit the over on that with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Odunze for sure. And I think he's definitely going to get us 4,000. I think if you want to talk fantasy football too, both of those guys, like I like Odunze as kind of a sleeper this year, and more so next year. Caleb, I think, is bona fide starter right off the bat for fantasy football too. Like I just think both these guys are going to be studs. So yeah, based on those 2 picks alone, like this class has to be an A, right? He just didn't have a lot to work with this year. He used some picks for other things, right? We brought in Sweat with one of the picks. Like that was huge. So I think, and gave up a pick to go get Keenan Allen. Like he's made some moves to get some really good veterans too. And if you're going to talk about him not having enough picks, like that's why, because he brought in those other 2 great players.
I mean, it's definitely shown that he's ready to compete now. And for the next like 4 years, the window of Caleb Williams' rookie contract, it's like, go for it. NFC Central is going to be a crazy division. I mean, the Packers, Love is maturing into a good bona fide quarterback. They had 11 rookies drafted this year. Lions, we know that they're a game away from the Super Bowl last year. Vikings go get JJ McCarthy as their new quarterback. We'll see how that plays out, but they're a playoff team as well. Like this might be one of the better divisions in the league. And I just hope that it's the Bears at 1. It's like it's finally we got that team, but also look around the division and it's one of the top divisions in the league, which kind of
is. It definitely is one of the top divisions in the league. And the Lions, like they made a nice trade on day 1 too to get back into the first round and take a defensive back too. Like they have a good GM. I think that's a good looking roster too. I don't know about JJ McCarthy. I don't know about that one.
No, I'm not.
I think that team's. I kind of think that team's going to stink this year. I think they're going to be pretty bad.
Yeah,
but let's go. Caleb Williams. I'm excited about it.
Playoffs
are bust. For sure. Playoffs are bust. What about you? Got to be playoffs.
Yeah. I hope for man, it's going to be madness as soon as the summer, preseason training starts. It's going to be absolutely sold out. I think we're going to get Hard Knocks. Like the media craze around the Bears is going to be insane.
I hope so. Hard Knocks would be awesome.
Yeah,
it would be awesome to be able to see that
too.
Caleb's a must watch. He's just fun to watch everything,
And if he had his way, he would say, he would like advocate for it, like bring it on. Like he does not shy away from the spotlight at all.
Yeah. Or like Mitch, turn off the TVs.
Right.
All right. Let's do a quick Cubs update. First place, 18-11.
Crazy.
They're ahead of the Brewers now. Brewers are 17-11. So, but their Cubs last 10, 6-4 home record, 10-3. Pretty great at home. It's awesome.
Yep.
That the Cubs are looking as good as they are. I think biggest surprise for me is this starting rotation with some of the injuries that we've had, right? Tyone's coming back. He's looked pretty good.
Looked like
Javier Assad has looked awesome. He's looked very good for being a back of the rotation starter. Kyle Hendricks, thank God he's hurt. But, I think the rotation's been holding its own a little bit here. The bullpen's been a little bit shaky, right? When you're looking at that, but
yeah, I think that's your biggest.
But the hitting's been great. Yeah,
I think your biggest question mark is obviously back end of the bullpen in general. They got to figure that out. Hopefully, add some pieces at the deadline. Their starting pitching has been patching it together. Jameson actually looks great. It's the best he's looked in a Cubs uniform. Happy about that. Shota has been
I
all you
didn't even
could ever
mention
want
Shota.
and more. Like, that guy's been insane to start his Cubs career. Steele went down after his first start, but he's supposed to be making a rehab start any day now, so he's on the way back. That's like promising right there to have 3 of those pitchers in your starting rotation. And then you got the young guys like Assad, who's just like quality. Every time he's on the mound, you know your team's got a chance to win. He goes deep. He's not flashy or anything, right? But he just like continues to get out of jams, continues to pitch well, and keep your club in the ball game. The bats are great. I'm seeing it's reminiscent of the 2016 Cubs, 2015 Cubs, where it's a very disciplined approach at the plate. Walks are happening, timely hitting is happening, and it's like it's not just swinging for the fences. Although Morel did hit the home run yesterday to win the game. It's a lot of just quality at bats. And gathering data, sharing it with your teammates, and figuring out what the pitcher's doing. It's just smart baseball. And I think that's what's allowing them to win a lot of games, is just like figuring shit out, being smart about it, not looking at the game as a game, but looking at it as, how many outs to win the game, how many runs to win the game kind of thing. Like, that's what Craig Counsell's all about, right? He doesn't look at starting pitching, relievers, or anything. He just looks like, all right, we need to get X amount of outs in a baseball game. How do we do that on a pitching standpoint?
Yeah.
Batters want to see as many pitches as possible, get as much data on the pitcher as possible to share it, so and you can prepare yourself for a professional at bat. Like, that's happening. It's fun to be a fan of this ball club. It's crazy they're in first place. It's like, we don't have a lot of superstars. I would say, but we just got to, and the ones that we do are hurt. Like, Bellinger broke a rib. Steele, Cy Young candidate last year, he's out. Seiya, our huge signing from Japan, he's out, and he like started off so hot to start the year. And guess what? 6-4 in the last 10. Like, we're still winning baseball games just because we're putting it together. We're playing smart baseball.
Yeah, PCA's looked good on the comeback up.
Yeah.
You mentioned Assad just now. Right now, the Cubs are playing.
Michael Busch at first base has been
Michael Busch has been awesome.
Great.
Yeah,
it's been great.
And Tauchman too. People might have thought last year was a fluke. He's looked good again this year, so maybe he's just figured something out. And then Bellinger continues to be Bellinger. I think he still looks great too. I don't know if he's going to be as good as he was last year, by the end of this year, but he's still looked really good and feels comfortable. He looks comfortable, in a Cubs uniform. So it's a good team, right? Assad's pitching right now, 5 innings, 5 hits, no earned runs. He just continues to be solid.
What he does, right? Yeah, he just
continues to just get outs. So Cubs it's 1-1 in the 6th right now, but hey, this team's looking really good, and I'm excited for Cubs baseball this year. All right, that's been our show. Thanks again for joining us today. For Dan Slowick, I'm Evan Bierman. You've been listening to the Domestic Draft Podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to rate the show. You can find us on Twitter at Domestic Draft, on Instagram at Domestic Draft Podcast. Our website is domesticdraft.com, and you can watch the show on YouTube. Just search up Domestic Draft and drop us a sub. Thanks again for listening.
Cheers.
Cheers.